It is a disaster. You have to put the numbers in context. So only 1.7% of ICE's caseload is in the detention center. So it's a very select group of people. If you want to see less people in detention, decrease illegal immigration. You want to get rid of detention centers? Secure the borders, use E-Verify so you don't lure as many people in here for jobs, and enforce the laws.
So, all right, you got 1,400 kids in there. And maybe 70%, again, we should be clear, unaccompanied minors is something that started and the government has struggled to figure out what to do with them. You got a 15-year-old, 16-year-old who's walking across the border. Now you've got kids that are being rendered unaccompanied because they're going to be taken from their parents who tend to be younger. So do we have a sense of the age range of these 1,400 kids in there?
Yeah, and they're all boys, I should say, and they're from age 10 to 17. So the thing that strikes me, you know, as a parent of a 2.5-year-old boy is what about from 0 to 10? You know, where are those kids? This is one of 100 facilities like this in the United States across some. It's organized chaos in there. I mean, it's hectic, but it is organized. And like I said, there 300 kids at a time are going to the chow. That's why I say it's like looking at a prison or in a jail. You know, they're all led to chow. There was a group of kids doing again, I kid you not, Tai Chi or recreation, or a group of boys sitting in the former loading dock of the Walmart in a theater watching the Disney movie Moana. They're just trying to keep these kids busy. They go to class for 6 hours a day and learn about American history. And honestly, one of the most striking things that I saw when you go in there is that this place has a lot of American history all over the place. Quotes, inspirational quotes, I guess, from former presidents. And the first one that you see when you walk in is Donald Trump.
There's a mural of Donald Trump.
That's a mural of Donald Trump with a quote from Donald Trump. I'm paraphrasing, talking about if you don't win the battle, there's a way to win the war. It is very. I mean, strange does not do it justice. What it's like in there. Let me ask you this. So you've got these. This is a nonprofit that has been contracted with the federal government to run this facility. What is the level of training and of these grown-ups who, watching 8 boys per grown-up for 22 hours a day is like, that's very serious work that requires very serious training. Yeah, and I want to be really clear. I think that there is very serious work and very serious training that goes on. These are accredited, licensed professionals, not just by the state of Texas, but again, this is a licensed facility, and it brings up the much larger issue because you have teachers in here, licensed teachers, licensed clinicians, 3 on-call doctors that are in this facility or around this facility at any time, a 48-person medical staff that's inside here. But
all Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens.
Well, I agree completely. We are really missing out on economic opportunities because we haven't been able to agree on comprehensive immigration reform. We have a lot of people who are working, as Brennan said, who are not authorized, but you know it, I know it. They are all over this state like every other state. They are paying into, a lot of them are, the Social Security system with no hope of ever realizing it unless we change the immigration rules. And we are, and I think Brennan's point's really an important one. We are turning down people who really want to work. I mean, they are here to work, and a lot of them now have children who are American citizens, and they are doing the best they can.
Following conditions: pay a fine because you entered illegally. Be willing to pay back taxes over time. Try to learn English, and we have to help you do that because we've cut back on so many of those services. And then you wait in line. That not only is, I think, the best way to approach the problem of our 12 to 14 million who are here, but that also says to Kim, this is the best answer as well, because once we have those conditions met and people agree, then they will not be in a labor market that undercuts anybody else's wages.
Senator.
And therefore, it's imperative we approach it this way. only after people have agreed to these conditions, Doyle, and that they have been willing to say, yes, they will meet those conditions, do I think we ought to talk about privileges like driver's licenses. Because otherwise, I think you will further undermine the labor market for people like the ones Kim is referring to. We need to solve this problem, not exacerbate it, and that's what I intend to do as president.
In case you missed it, it's all Donald Trump's fault. Everything. Name something bad, he's the reason. Climate change, his fault. Asteroids, his fault. Earthquakes, those faults are his faults. Yeah. A little wordplay for Saturday nights. You don't get that on Water's World. Every bad thing ever. I love Jesse. Everything bad ever is on the head of this evil orange monster from hell. Especially if you're the media. Take these images of immigrant children sleeping in cages. Journalists, politicians, Obama flacks, they all blame Trump. Turns out the photos are 4 years old when Obama was in charge. Whoops. Then there's, this is even better, this photo. An all-baby seat immigration detention bus, also blamed on Trump. It was called a prison bus for babies by an anchor, a prison bus for babies. How could anyone say that with a straight face and believe it? A journalist. I mean, who would make a prison bus for babies? It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. A prison bus for babies. But you'll believe anything if you hate Trump, even though this photo was also from Obama's era, and no, it wasn't a prison bus for babies. It's for a field trip. Anyway, now you'd expect the media to check the date on a photo. I mean, that is their job, to check actual facts. It's almost as though they need some kind of help.
All of them can be sent back, but I think all of them who can be should be reunited with their families. And just as Vice President Biden is arguing today in Central America, we've got to do more. I started this when I was secretary, to deal with the violence in this region, to deal with border security. But we have to send a clear message. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay. So we don't want to send a message that is contrary to our laws or will encourage more children to make that dangerous journey.
Last time we spoke, you said that you weren't king, you were president. There were only certain things you could do unilaterally. As time goes on, 1,000 deportations on average a day. People are wondering, and our Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds, that's the question everybody asks. Won't you at least consider unilaterally freezing deportations for the parents of deferred action kids?
Yeah. Here's the problem that I have, Jose, and I've said this consistently. My job in the executive branch is supposed to be to carry out the laws that are passed. Congress has said, here's the law when it comes to those who are undocumented, and they allocate a whole bunch of money for enforcement. And what I have been able to do is to make a legal argument that I think is absolutely right, which is that given the resources we have, we can't do everything that Congress has asked us to do. What we can do is then carve out the DREAM Act folks, saying young people who have basically grown up here are Americans that we should welcome. We're not going to have them operate under a cloud, under a shadow. But if we start broadening that, then essentially I would be ignoring the law in a way that I think would be very difficult to defend legally. So that's not an option.
I believe that we have got to pass comprehensive immigration reform, something that I strongly supported. I believe that we have got to move toward a path toward citizenship. I agree with President Obama, who used executive orders to protect families because the Congress, the House, was unable or refused to act. And in fact, I would go further. What would motivate me and what would be the guiding light for me in terms of immigration reform, Judy, is to bring families together, not divide them up. And let me say this also. Somebody who was very fond of the president, agrees with him most of the time. I disagree with his recent deportation policies, and I would not support those. Bottom line is a path towards citizenship for 11 million undocumented people. If Congress doesn't do the right thing, we use the executive orders of the president.
The Obama administration will ask Congress today for at least $2 billion. The money would help deal with the growing immigrant crisis along the border with Mexico. Since October, more than 52,000 kids have been caught crossing into this country. They came here illegally and on their own. The children are mostly from Central America. Detention centers are overwhelmed by the surge. Some of those kids have no choice but to sleep on floors. Along with the new funding, the White House also wants the authority to fast-track deportations and to enforce tougher penalties against human traffickers.
Is it typically 3 boys to a room?
3, maybe 2, but no more.
A clean, modest, and comfortable room for 3 immigrant boys who've had a harrowing journey. 46 boys live in this 18-bedroom house. Many have to be taught some of the most basic life skills.
They do it all. They learn how to wash clothes, do their laundry.
This is part of a 200-plus acre campus operated by a nonprofit called Youth for Tomorrow. It's in Bristow, Virginia, about 30 miles outside Washington. It was founded by former Washington Redskins coach Joe Gibbs in 1986, and one of its primary roles is to house unaccompanied immigrant minors. Many arrive here in an extremely fragile emotional state.
They've been physically beaten. Many of the girls have been sex trafficked and sexually abused, sexually exploited. Many of the boys have been threatened with their lives if they don't sell drugs.
CNN got exclusive access inside the facility, but due to federal law, we were not allowed to film any children or even to talk to them off camera. Officials here say that if images of these children are shown to the public, they could be targeted by gangs or human traffickers. Most of the more than 100 immigrant children here are between 10 and 17 years old. All of them are unaccompanied, but there are also some infants who are housed here with their mothers. Some of those babies were even born here.
We will have a crib for the baby and the mommy, and if 2 girls, 2 teen girls came, then they will be able to share a room. But when a mommy and me comes, we just give them a room for just the 2 of them.
CNN has reported extensively in recent days on abuses, neglect, and poor conditions in detention facilities faced by many immigrant children in the current wave of migration. Officials at this group home want to show another side of that story, a place that takes pride in caring for the most vulnerable and traumatized of the recent immigrants. They have a library here, well-appointed classrooms, a soccer field, and a gym. The immigrant children are housed and schooled here, but are kept completely separate from American children.
We've got to do several things, and I am, adamantly against illegal immigrants. I made this exception basically on humanitarian grounds because of the individual stories, but certainly we've got to do more at our borders, and people have to stop employing illegal immigrants. Come up to Westchester, go to Suffolk and Nassau counties, stand in the street corners in Brooklyn or the Bronx. You're going to see loads of people waiting to get picked up to go do yard work and construction work and domestic work.
We all agree on the need to better secure the border and to punish employers who choose to hire illegal immigrants. We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law. We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country. So that's why we need to start by giving agencies charged with border security new technology, new facilities, and more people to stop, process, and deport illegal immigrants.
$1 billion to handle the overflow of illegal immigrants, mostly women and children. Ironically, $4 billion would have prevented Detroit's bankruptcy. One Detroit woman wonders, what about her children?
Now, where'd you just come from?
I just came from Crossroads trying to get some help to see if they can help me with some beds and furniture for my sons. And they basically turned me away, told me they didn't have anything that they can help me with. But I do hear that they about to pay for these kids and, to come over. And I don't think it's fair because they're not helping us with nothing. So how are y'all going to bring anybody else over here to help them, to help them out, and we here already and nobody is helping us with anything. I think that is not fair, I think it's wrong, and I think we need a little bit more help going on.
Is that racist you're feeling, or is it just us first?
I feel it's us first. I feel it's us. us as Detroit blacks, however you want to put it, I feel it's just us.
Americans.
Yes.